In the year 77 AD, a Roman senator named Gaius Plinius Secundus sat down to calculate a number that disturbed him deeply. He was compiling his encyclopedic work on the natural world, and somewhere between cataloguing exotic spices and the habits of elephants, he paused to add up what Rome was spending on luxury goods from the East. The figure he arrived at was 100 million sesterces per year, drained out of the empire in gold and silver, flowing toward India and beyond toward China, in exchange for silk, pepper, cinnamon, and gems. He did not mince words about what he thought of this arrangement. He called it the price of luxury and Roman womanhood. But the complaint he was really making, underneath the moralism, was a monetary one. The metal was leaving, and it was not coming back. Rome was running a structural trade deficit, and it was paying in hard money. That is where we begin. Not with a battle, not with a barbarian at the gate, but with a ledger. Because empires, almost without exception, do not die the way their monuments suggest they should. They do not fall in a single dramatic moment of military defeat. They corrode from the inside, and the corrosion almost always starts in the same place, the money. The currency weakens before the army does. Confidence drains before the walls come down. And once you understand the mechanism, the precise sequence by which a great power destroys its own monetary foundation, you will be able to read the warning signs wherever they appear, across any century, under any flag. The mechanism has a shape. It looks like this. An empire rises on sound, credible money. It uses that money to project power, build infrastructure, and fund trade. Over time, the cost of maintaining that empire exceeds what honest taxation can cover. The gap is filled not by reform but by debasement, by quietly reducing the metal content of the coin or, in later eras, by printing. For a time the trick works. Then it doesn't. Confidence erodes, prices rise, the currency loses its hold as a trusted medium of exchange, and the reserve status that once made the empire's money the world's money begins to slip away. What follows is not a mystery. It is a ledger settling itself. Rome's version of this story is unusually well documented, which is why it is so instructive. At its height, the Roman denarius was a silver coin of roughly 4 grams, and it was trusted from the North Sea to the Persian Gulf. That trust was the foundation of everything: taxation, military pay, commercial contracts, the entire administrative machinery of empire. But from the time of Pliny's complaint onward, the structural drain of silver eastward was creating a quiet pressure on the money supply. Rome could not print metal. It could only find it or take it. When the conquest slowed, when there were no more Dacian gold mines to plunder, no more rich provinces to absorb, the inflow stopped. The outflow did not. Think of the Roman monetary system in this period as a borrowed candle. When Rome was expanding, each new conquest brought enough wax to keep the flame burning. Tribute, looted treasure, provincial taxes paid in silver, all of it fed back into the Roman money supply and justified the coin's credibility. But the moment expansion stalled, the candle was burning through wax that was not being replaced. The trade deficit with the East was not just an economic inconvenience. It was the candle burning from both ends, luxury imports consuming the silver supply at exactly the moment military and administrative costs were rising. By the reign of Nero, around 64 AD, the denarius had already been reduced slightly in silver content, a modest clip that most people at the time would have barely noticed. But the direction was established. By the reign of Septimius Severus in the early 3rd century, the coin was hovering around 50% silver. By the reign of Gallienus, around 260 AD, it had fallen to somewhere between 2 and 5% silver content. What had once been a credible monetary instrument had become a bronze coin with a thin silver wash. The Roman soldiers being paid in these coins were not fooled indefinitely. Neither were the merchants. Neither were the foreign trading partners who had once accepted Roman denarii because the metal content was reliable. This is the stage most empires try to hide from themselves. Historians debate the precise silver content at various points, the numismatic evidence is incomplete, and different mints produce different quality. But the pattern holds. Debasement never stays modest. Once the mechanism is in motion, once the gap between expenditure and honest revenue is being filled by reducing coin quality rather than reforming the fiscal structure, the incentive to debase again is always stronger than the incentive to stop. Each debasement is a tax on everyone who holds the currency, invisible and politically convenient. And each one makes the next one more necessary, because it erodes confidence, drives the better coins out of circulation, people hoard the old silver denarii and spend the debased ones, and forces prices upward in nominal terms. Which empire do you think we are most like right now? Tell me below. Rome was not unique in following this sequence. In the 16th century, Spain received an unprecedented inflow of silver from the mines of Potosí in modern-day Bolivia, beginning in significant volume around 1545. By most estimates, Spanish America produced roughly 80% of the world's silver over the following century. Spain had the hard money. It should have built the most durable monetary foundation in history. Instead, the windfall funded wars, court expenditure, and the servicing of debts already owed to Genoese and German bankers. The silver flowed in and flowed straight back out, and by 1557, Philip II had declared the first of several sovereign defaults. Spain held the world's reserve currency and still managed to destroy the fiscal integrity behind it. The mechanism does not require a trade deficit specifically. It requires spending that permanently exceeds the honest capacity to pay. The sterling to dollar handover in the 20th century followed a quieter version of the same logic. Britain entered the First World War as the world's dominant creditor nation, with the pound sterling as the anchor currency of global trade. By 1918, it had liquidated a significant portion of its foreign investment portfolio to finance the conflict. By 1945, it was a net debtor. The Bretton Woods Conference of 1944 was not simply a diplomatic negotiation. It was the formal acknowledgment that the ledger had shifted. The country whose currency held reserve status would henceforth be the one that was, at that moment, the world's largest creditor. The torch does not pass ceremonially. It passes because someone runs out of wax. Here is the false belief that every declining empire holds, and that its citizens and administrators believe with complete sincerity, that their situation is exceptional, that the normal rules of monetary credibility do not apply to them because of their unique power, their unique institutions, their unique place in the world. Roman emperors in the 3rd century were not stupid men. They understood, in some abstract sense, that reducing the silver content of the denarius was a dangerous act. But they also believed, they had to believe, that Rome's institutional weight was sufficient to sustain the coin's credibility despite the metal content. This belief was not cynical. It was sincere. And it was exactly wrong. It is wrong for the same reason every time. Confidence in a currency is not a function of the issuer's self-assessment. It is a function of every single person who uses the currency deciding, in each transaction, whether to trust it. That trust is slow to build and fast to lose, and no empire has ever successfully commanded it back once it began to slip. The warning signs are not hidden. They are the same sequence in every era. Watch for a structural external imbalance that cannot close without painful adjustment, paired with a domestic political structure that finds debasement more palatable than reform. Watch for the moment when the currency's credibility is defended rhetorically rather than through the underlying fundamentals. Watch for foreign holders of the currency beginning to diversify quietly and without announcement, the way a cautious guest at a party slips out before the formal ending. And watch, above all, for the official insistence that this time is different, because that insistence is not a rebuttal of the pattern. It is the pattern's final stage. The Roman denarius survived in name for centuries after it ceased to function as a reliable store of value. The monetary reality had changed long before anyone formally declared it changed. Empires are always the last to read their own ledgers honestly. The ledger, however, does not require their consent. It settles itself regardless, in its own time, with a patience that outlasts any particular reign, any particular ideology, any particular flag flying above the treasury. History does not repeat, but the money rhymes. Subscribe for the patterns that outlast every empire, and tell me below which collapse you want decoded next.